So welcome, Lara. It's a real privilege to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm always honoured when I get invited, and I always think of my parents being absolutely amazed.
So what do your parents still think you do, or are they fully in line with where you are today?
Yeah, no, unfortunately my dad's gone, but I think my mum's still coming to grips with the lunacy of the life that I choose to lead. But it's something that you know, when you grow up in a 3-bedroom flat in Hong Kong, which was my childhood, and my dad did run a business, but he went bankrupt. You know, I think, and my mum actually ran the more successful teaching business. I think those things, you know, she reflects and she knows that she's a huge part of my inspiration. So we've been on a journey together.
That's wonderful. And talking about journeys, I mean, you have this incredible business right now producing these products to enhance everyone's life, if you like. But how did you get to that stage? Because I suspect there's quite a journey behind that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the whole journey of my first enterprise, or not quite my first enterprise experience, is behind my brand Scentered. And, you know, I think so many businesses are brought out of our own personal frustrations with a product or a service that we then go, we can do better, right? And actually, I think, you know, that in itself is a hell of a certainty, because if you feel passionate enough to change something, then you've got the potential makings of a business. Now, actually, my journey wasn't originally like that. I traded cigarettes at school when I was at boarding school in Scotland, and that was my deepest margin business, but that's well behind me. And then, you know, I couldn't afford to go to university. My father had gone bankrupt, as I say, and I had to get a job, and my job was in selling. So that kind of platform of experience has just stood me in such great stead as a I would say my skill is my sales ability, but I've really worked and honed on reading books and stuff. And what happened is then at the age of 23, which I have to say is nearly 3 decades ago, not very far from 3 decades. So, you know, there's a lot of experience and a shed load of scars to share. But, you know, the journey of a 23-year-old in 1991, which was the crux of a really mega recession. I didn't even know what the word recession meant. You know, I started my own company. There were no jobs. There were no jobs for salespeople. So it was like, make a job, don't, you know, take a job. There were no jobs, not choice. My grandmother was clearly worried about me starving. She said, if you're going to sell hotel products, darling, go to the best, go to the Savoy and the Dorchester. And so I potted off genuinely down to the Monopoly board, for those of you that know Monopoly as a game. Found myself on Park Lane and thought, oh my God, this is really expensive. And thereby my first business began. I went to the Dorchester and I showed them a pre-threaded sewing kit. And candidly, 17 years later of a roller coaster from hell on some days, great joys, great highs, great lows, great experiences, learning all the way. I sold that business 12 years ago for just over 20 million pounds, and I was 99% shareholder. And the reason I share that is not to go, ooh, aren't I super lovely, clever? It's actually because too many people, and particularly women, sell too much equity in their development, and they take too many advisors on, and they don't believe in themselves enough to hang on to the equity and just go the journey. And you can't make money overnight. I mean, it took 17 years, and I now, you know, in my last year, so that's the really answer to your question. So for those of you that have small children, please don't, you know, please understand you make sacrifices. But I was 221 nights overseas in hotel rooms selling my product. That's, you know, I was a major shareholder, but it didn't mean I needed to do the boring job of general management. I loved selling. I still like traveling. I had to take about 5 years of recovery where I didn't want to travel. And I never traveled in business class. I always traveled in economy to set an example to my team. But in that experience, I was getting very tired. I breastfed all my children, and I had 3 kids under the age of 6 when I sold. And I'd had this, you'd call it an exchange of views, but most would call it an argument with my mum. And apparently I was twitching and blinking at her. And, you know, I was also doing this thing where I used to hang on to the handles of seats to try and get air into my lungs. Now, my mum is trained in aromatherapy and she's knowledgeable in homeopathy, and she's looking at this sort of gradually deteriorating young woman who's got 3 small kids and is trying to sell and breastfeed and work out what's for supper. And I get that, and I'll never forget those years. But she said, for God's sake, stop, inhale, and reset. And immediately after that, she gifted me some aromatherapy oils. And frankly, off the back of that, Scentered, spelt with an S, not, you know, we feel centered when we take that inhale. And it makes us just inject the body with oxygen. And actually, practically, you could say that's all you need. But my fragrance brands, which I learned from selling beautiful toiletries to hotels, they invigorate the mindset. And I am determined to make this, says she, digging it out of her pocket, miniature, tiny, portable. This one's actually been through the wash, and you apply it to your pulse points. And the point is that actually just the stop mechanism and the breathe mechanism, and then you can use different fragrances to invigorate the mind. That came out of 17 years of relentless lesson in enterprise. And I kind of, you know, I want to share that and celebrate the simplicity of a tool, right? It's a ritual, it's a habit, it's a routine. And actually, so is enterprise. Enterprise is predetermined, it's planning, it's going with your gut. There's so many things that I feel the ability to stop, inhale, and reset can do for people. It creates wealth. Yeah, so I invest in health and wellness businesses. I have a portfolio. I'm one of the few proper investors that puts her money on the table. I absolutely love it. I have a yoga brand called Yogi Bear. I have Kit Bricks, which is a sports outdoor company. And I invest in people with great product that bring wellness to the universe. Yeah. Sorry, long answer, but I love what I do.
Yeah, no, that's clear. And yeah, it was a perfect answer, and so much within that. And yeah, I love this idea of stop and was it stop, unwind, and
stop, inhale, reset.
Stop, inhale, reset. Yeah. And I really, in my first business, well, it wasn't really, it was, I say it was a business, but it wasn't. I started as a communication consultant, and I was working with Fortune 500 companies, UN, small companies as well. Wow. And it was what felt I could do around my kids, because I was working abroad. I didn't speak the local language. I didn't have support network, but I wanted to continue doing something, not something around. But in fact, I didn't start a business. I just swapped one boss for several who all had conflicting agendas and everything. And I put everything into my business, everything into my family, and nothing for me. And similarly, like after 8 years of doing that, I was really heading full pelt towards a burnout. And so I learned the hard way, kind of like yourself, that those words are so powerful. And in the confinement recently, with my, I felt that overwhelm again. It was all about keeping my business going, keeping my kids off screens as much as possible. I'm trying to.
Yeah, no, I mean, don't people just love to bandy this utterly unassailable word, balance? You know, I'm always asked when I speak, you know, particularly, I guess, because I am a female, and I don't think that's appropriate, because I actually, without my husband, I am toast. Let's be very clear. But, you know, the idea that we have a balance, I mean, you know, I always say this to particularly the female audiences, you know, we have to think differently, and we have to be fair to ourselves. And also, we've got to be honest, right? You want to run a business, and, you know, whether it's a hobby business or a proper, you know, small business, or actually a global business. I mean, mine became, you know, we supplied products to luxury hotels in 110 countries, and we had 9 offices and 2 factories. And I say that and I go, oh my God, I used to own that. And people would always ask this balance question. And, you know, now more than ever with COVID, I've got the constant juggle of my team. And don't get me wrong, we were already remote. I believe in the modernity of trust and agility, and do the hours and be available when you need to be, but be grown up, because we've got lives. And, you know, I think you build a resilience. And the point is that, you know, on the days when Pacific was absolutely growing like stink, I'm on it. You know, everything's working, just got a new contract. I'm feeling fat Alice, meaning, and apologies to anybody called Alice, but I just feel fat, and I haven't been training enough, or I haven't been looking after my personal well-being, and I've probably got hairy legs that need waxing, and I'm really sorry, but that's just life. And equally on that day, I may be feeling totally up, but I could choose, and I don't choose, to carry the card of guilt about not seeing enough of my kids. And, you know, there'll be people who literally will go, oh my God, how could she have gone 221 days abroad? Well, to make 20 million quid, you have to sacrifice something, right? And I never missed a sports day. I went to 9 nativity plays, and only on the 9th one did I get more than a sheep, a star, or a tree. I got Mary, and that was wicked. You know, that grounding of you've got to choose. And for me, actually, sports day was more important than the carol singing, but I went to carol singing as well because I thought it was a part of the family. And, you know, I've written a book where I walked around the garden in July when it was too hot to cool a cake. But I'd flown in, I'd landed at Heathrow at 4:45 in the morning, gone straight home before the kids got up. It was Katie's birthday the next day, and I made a cake. And that's because my mum always made my cakes. But the stress, right? The stress we put on ourselves, you know, unreasonable. And you've got to choose your battles, right? So, you know, that you're never going to feel normal if you're trying to pursue enterprise.
Yeah.
Not normal, right? You're the leader.
Yeah, I think that point about guilt is so important. And I gave up on guilt a long time ago. It wasn't easy.
We all need to, you know, and the best way of understanding this is the journalist told me, one really senior journalist, he said, Lara, in the newsroom, when we want to batter females, we go, bad mothers, entrepreneurs never see their kids. On the good days, when you're doing well, we go, entrepreneurs, females, wow, kids that are confident and they're able and they're following in their foot, you know. And he said, you'll never win this argument. It's a seesaw, and you must do what's right for you, right? But you also can't be down on yourself about sometimes the restrictions that we build because we do behave differently. But I'll tell you what, my personal belief is that females have this emotional well-being quotient that's much bigger. And that, for me, has built loyalty in people. And when I say loyalty, I mean off the charts. You know, I get emotional when I talk about it because I have great people working with me because I've treated them reasonably, and they'll come back to me. And I'm so proud of their development and their skill set. And we as women do that better than anyone in the universe.
Yeah, I remember when I established the Women's Network many years ago when I worked in corporate, and I was reading up as much as I could about the subject and really wanting to support the women in the business as much as possible. And there was a book, and it's a great book called Why the Best Man for the Job is a Woman. And the whole point is that companies spend a fortune sending men to try and train to have all these soft skills that are just natural for women. And yeah, it was really to try and help women recognize that we don't really recognize our leadership abilities enough, and that they're innate because we have to lead our family and care for people, and this is what good management is all about. There's a management book called The One Thing Every Manager Should Know, and that one thing is you've got to genuinely care about your people, and that's it. And that's something that women,
you can't make that unauthentic, can you?
Yeah, exactly. And so yeah, it's great to hear you say that. And you were talking about sacrifice, and I heard a great concept a while ago that, you know, people think of sacrifice as like, oh, poor me, I have to give up all this stuff, but it's not. It's like giving up one thing for something better. And that's all. And I thought, yeah, that's what it's. Yeah, I may miss out on this, but it's because I'm creating something better for the future. I'm building something better. And if you're sacrificing something for something less, then that's the wrong decision.
Yeah, no, I mean, you know, it's our choice to do what we do each day. It's as a human being, it doesn't matter what sex you are, or and let me tell you, you know, enterprise, I think we often forget the honesty of how flipping hard work it is. And I always say to startup entrepreneurs, you know, please don't ask your family and friends whether they think your idea is good, because they're going to lie to you because they love you, right? What you must do is you must ask strangers. And this is really hard work. When I say hard work, harder work than you have possibly ever, almost definitely ever experienced in your life, because again, it's your choice to run this race. You are entering the race, and it is a race. Business is a race. It's not a game. There are very significant differences. And, you know, I'm thinking about progress that you make and the determination and the drive, where when we get up and we get down, and we've got to be self-motivated more than any other on earth, because our infectious pride in the product, in the solution, you know, take a breath when it goes wrong, and don't beat yourself up, because you're trying. And most of the world isn't leading. The percentages are tiny, and you're carrying, in my view, one of my motivators was, the huge responsibility of paying somebody's mortgage because you ultimately pay their salary is the way I used to go. I know what the scores are. I have to keep my eye on the finances because I have got to pay for Carol and Margaret and Rachel and my first 3 employees. They've trusted to work with me, and I mean with, not for, right? We work together. And the hierarchy is that I, as a CEO, sit at the bottom, and I only got a CEO by default, by the way, because I arrived first, and then it worked out quite well, but titles are bullshit. And the point is that all we should do every day is try and be better to help take the barriers away for our team so that we can serve the number one person in the universe, the customer. The customer's king, right? And in between, we've got to do the maths that says it's profitable to do it. So the other thing I'd say, and I wrote this down with large letters, right? Learn to say no more than yes, because no is something women are rubbish at. In the same way, we sort of feel we have to help. We don't, right? The guys don't help anyone. They help themselves. And they help themselves every day, and they don't think of anyone else. And in fact, they walk on each other, and they call it clubs, but actually they're all trying to get ahead. And I think we've got to be more resilient and more assertive in our determination to achieve, because if you're not, and you can't play in just a women-only ballpark, right? You can't. It doesn't work. You've got to educate, and you educate by staying in the game, and the game is a mixed game. And by the way, it's quite good fun. I like learning from lots of people all of the time.
Yeah. So how did it feel, or what did it mean for you when you took that decision to start saying no more?
Oh, it's hard, right? I mean, I feel, and by the way, I still have to sort of garner myself. It's pathetic. I mean, the demands, I'm very lucky. I get a lot of requests. And so, you have to be selective about your time. And I'm much more conscious of family time and my time and business time. And I'm useless still in the middle one, because for me, my business is my time too. I cheat in a positively sort of light-hearted way. I just love my work, and my work is not work anymore because I'm in a very privileged position. So I'd rather choose this. But balancing your diary, organizing your schedule, getting ahead in the morning. There are some great habits where we can choose to be unbelievably effective. I was in that, I think most relationships are like this, but my mum always would lose the keys to the house and the car, and Jesus. And I'm so systematic, right? I know where the keys are every day of the week. My husband still drives me nuts and loses the keys, different story. But my point is that you have to be self-disciplined, and you have to make choices all the way along, and you will progress. Also, if you celebrate for yourself, because it's a very lonely, I mean, at the beginning of my biggest mistake was I didn't have camaraderie of others traveling on my journey. And you are by no means alone, which is why what you're doing, Melita, is so important, because you can hear, my first 2 years, I still remember as the loneliest, toughest, most challenging. And by the way, 56% of businesses fail after 2 years. So, you really need to knuckle down, and you need to have also, I hope, some kind of partner or assistant that can pick you up, and that's mentoring. And, I think that is also a priceless gift that you can get for free from someone who's older, grayer, more experienced, and my goodness, they'll also learn from you, and it can be a really fun exchange.
Yeah, exactly. And I advise everyone to have that success circle, having at least one other person who gets your mission, understands your purpose, where you're going, and is there for you, and you're there for them equally. And it's so important to have that. And it's one of those recurring themes on this podcast. I think every single guest has said, have a support network around you, even if it is just one other person that's there for you. You need that, because otherwise, as you say, it's very lonely, and most people around you have no idea about what it takes to build a business, and they'll think they're doing the nice supportive thing and saying the right things, but they're not.
No. And I mean, the self-awareness of your own personal style is another asset that you've got to be brutally honest with yourself. One really major tipping point, I just had to put my hand up and go, do you know what? I hate admin. I've always hated admin. I've only done it because I have to do it to get to this stage, but now I can afford, and that's where we start to divide resources, and you just got to put your hand up and go, I'm good at this and I'm rubbish at this. So why don't I do more of this and less of the stuff I'm rubbish at? And we together will thrive, but you have to share and reward. And I think, you don't have to be over, I mean, again, for God's sake, don't sell equity lightly, but if you haven't got a grandmother to sell before you sell equity, duck and dive and find lots of ways. But equally, if in the end your business is a tech kind, you may need to sell a lot of equity to get from A to B, or if the real growth ambition is huge. So you're going to have to learn a language of business, a language of money, finance. You can never ever lose sight of the accounting platform, so you know where your cash is. That's when I say that, of everything I say today, cash is king, and profit is vanity, and profit is sanity. But actually, in the bed, in that bank, the cash that you have is all you've got to play with, right? You can't speculate in that way. And then the other thing is, I think, always be learning. I read, and all the time, the business section of a very famous bookstore here in Britain called W.H. Smith's. It's at every airport. I would always buy a business book. What are you doing to learn, listen, grow every day, week, and month to stay up with business? Because goodness, it's moving quickly. It always has.
And the beauty is it's easier now than ever. I know I'm sitting down to read a book isn't something that I have the time or the energy for. Whenever I try, I just fall asleep. But we've got Audible now, so the books follow me around everything. So when I'm getting ready in the mornings, I'm reading my book, or when I'm driving the kids around, so I read like so many. I think last year I got through 32 business books on Audible, and it was, I would never have been able to sit down and read those. And some I've had to listen to more than once, because you don't always take everything in. But also they're like fairy tales, aren't they? That you read it once, and then the second time you read it, you've grown, you've moved, you've taken on board what stood out for you the first time, and then you take a whole new level of information the second time you read, particularly with some of the classics. As you move forward, it's important to go back and reread and remind yourself.
I mean, laughably, I genuinely plan to reread my own book, More Balls Than Most, because kind of I've forgotten how much we achieved, and you forget what you've learned, and you need to keep reminding yourself. So you're exactly right.
Yeah, exactly. So I know we're running out of time, but can I just ask you about your opinion on sales? Obviously, we can't do a sales masterclass, that's beyond the scope, but I know that's another thing that a lot of women struggle with. Do you have any words that would help people think differently about how they take sales on board?
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you, first of all, I'll tell you, there isn't a company in the world, it doesn't matter whether you're a woman or a man, who sells enough of the time, meaning they don't actually manage to utilize time to their full benefit, where, the truth is you have no need. I don't buy the chicken or egg argument. Until you've got a sale, a purchase order, a confirmed something from the customer, you have nothing, right? So if you can't sell, you need a partner who can sell. And you really need to know that that partner can sell, and that they've got proven performance and track record. But more importantly, I'm biased, but sales is the thing I absolutely am passionate about. And what I can hand on heart say is, you have to be a sales professional all day, every day, pursuing prospects and leads and prioritizing by potential. And you have to read books on selling, because it is a profession. It's not something that is a dirty sort of, career choice. It's absolutely brilliant. It's the only career where you don't limit your earnings. Look at me, I've made, literally millions. And, nobody tells me how to live, and I get to make my choices on where I go, who I speak to. And I have a riot meeting people and going around the world selling my wares. And, I'm absolutely clear that we need to be more, if you put hands up in this audience, whoever would listen, I'll bet 4% of them have had professional sales training. And that's the first sign of insanity. If you keep doing what you've always done and you don't change it, you don't make an effort, you're going to get the same results. And that's absolutely paramount, that in sales, you have a process, you have a CRM system, you capture data, you understand value proposition, you've got to, learning sales, be really clear, without having a funnel and a pipeline, understanding your metrics, conversion opportunities. This is all a language you can tell. It's like water off a duck's back. But firstly and foremostly, to answer your question, you have to qualify the opportunity. Too many people spend too much time selling to people that aren't in buying mode. and they haven't qualified, is the customer genuinely interested? Do they have a budget? And when do they need it by? How many, how much, by when? And, you know, for goodness sakes, stop fanning around and having lovely consultative conversations and start properly going, I've got a great product. I have a great service. I'm infectiously proud of what I do and what I offer. We service it and we make promises we can keep. We package it in a sustainably eco-sensible way. We are the best in class for this feature because features tell, but more importantly for this benefit because benefits sell. Never ever make a pitch where the feature and the benefit is not connected. And for goodness sakes, ladies, most of you, ask for the order, because in asking you get to either an objection of no, which is I can't order because you haven't told me this, or you get to the objection of no, because I'm not a suitable buyer. And that means you should start selling somewhere else and have a polite exit. Oh, there's so much to learn. I can't tell you, Melita, how important it is to invest in sales professionalism. And it's not, you know, it's not unhinged bias. You can have a business without a sell.
No, exactly. And I was very fortunate in my first business that my credibility and my reputation went before me. So sales just dropped in my lap. Then when I switched that to, I had a wellness product business for a while. And that was my first sort of real eye opener to real sales. I was like, wow. And I was dreading it. But actually, once I started to learn the skills and put them into practice, I loved it. And it was, yeah, so it was amazing.
It is also, you need to kind of get your language and your cadence, and you're going to get rejection, and you're then going to go, oh, I better not say that again. And the point is that you hone it, but you've got to be in it to hone it. So you've got to be practicing.
Yeah, exactly. Amazing words. Lara, you have been an amazing guest, and I'm going to share all of your details below because I know everyone's going to want to go and check out more about you and your amazing businesses. But thank you so much for all of the encouragement and wisdom you've shared today.
So one small ask, because you should always be selling, there is this thing that literally says, so if you have enjoyed my podcast and you've got someone who's having, you know, challenging issues, or they just need a bit of a boost, my brand Scentered, the mindful well-being of a gift of a candle that is truly beautifully natural, essential oils that change the mindset through the balms, you know, that's my thank you. And equally, you know, share the importance of talking about mental downs and mental ups, because it's much, a problem shared is genuinely a problem halved. And I can only wish your listeners well.
Thank you, Lara. And during confinement, especially, having aromatherapy scented candles has helped me enormously, because they have helped me to stay centered, and also I have different scents in different rooms in different parts of the day. So even though we're in one space, it breaks it up a little bit mentally and just helps me to, okay, this is the space where I switch off. This is the space where I focus.
Yeah, and I mean, genuinely, the balm focus changed my life, because it kind of reminds you of that very fresh smell of rosemary between your fingers. But truthfully, it's uplifting and it's eye-opening. It gets me on my game, which is why it's my go-to. But yeah, I wish you well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Lara.